in business, I guess that would be my father. My father did not have a college degree, but he was a very strong-willed, very intelligent businessman, and always dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and always wanted what was right. We are contractors, and you have to stand up for yourself. And I have been impressed over the years with his insight. Wow, he's right. That's you wouldn't think that, but they're through many different situations. So I'd say my father was an influence on me.
So
well.
Kevin, when you were at St. Joe's, you decided that you wanted to go to Princeton. And I'm going to use the word willful, okay? I made a decision that I was going to go play football in the Ivy League. Coach, we know how powerful the word will is, but Kevin, maybe you can tell me a little bit your own process and how that happened for you.
Well, for myself, I started off as doing cross country in the fall. It sounds like many of the coaches, athletes here, doing a multiple sport thing at St. Joe's, and got dragged down to West Side Rowing Club by one of the rowers who asked me to try out for my freshman year, and took that 20-minute drive down to Black Rock Canal and into West Side Rowing Club and tried the rowing machine. They actually have indoor rowing tanks there, and so I started there. And then when I started to hear that, wow, this might be a vehicle to break into the Ivy League.
And you were thinking about it that early, Kevin?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go to a place that was going to challenge me academically, but also athletically, and I knew my parents couldn't afford college. So I knew that was going to be a factor, so I had to win some type of scholarship. So rowing was, from what I could research, was one of the best vehicles to get me to that goal. So 4 years of training and some great coaching and some great influences at St. Joe's and good teachers and mentors, it all came together.
Kevin, was there a point that you can recall, whether it was your freshman year, your sophomore year, how long was it, is your best recollection, when you realized this is my sport and I get it, and I really, besides the vehicle it provided, I want to do this? It
was probably in my sophomore year when my mother said to me, she's like, well, it's good that that you seem to be taking a liking towards rowing because you have no hand-eye coordination, and at least with rowing you don't need any coordination. So I think I was almost by limiting out other sports, rowing became like my sport, and I was always good at the aerobic, but I think sophomore year it clicked. I think that St. Joe's, we won the national championships that year, and I said, wow, I don't know if I can win a national championship in any other sport. It's not going to be basketball, it's not going to be baseball. And so I think I kind of decided sophomore year at St. Joe's that I was going to dedicate my energy and effort towards that and swing at the fences. And then if it worked, great. If not, probably need to give up athletics totally.
Let's talk about swinging at the fences. I mean, for a St. Joe's kid to say, I'm going to go to Princeton, coming from a kid on the other side of the tracks, whose family knew the value of a nickel. I mean, that's a pretty big jump to make, especially given the fact it's not like your father and brothers and sisters all went to Princeton and had that as a track record. But then you turn around, and your two brothers, Brian and Patrick, right behind you, they go to Princeton. I think your sister rowed at Columbia University.
Right.
So basically, you set the path for your entire family on a rowing path through the Ivy League. Maybe
Rudy,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss this in Buffalo and in all the high schools, that rowing is one of the few sports that can really open up doors at some amazing institutions. And my two brothers were, also rowers and my sister rowers, all national champions in high school and made it. And my brothers are sure to remind me that I never won a Canadian Henley Gold, although I did win the World Championships on the St. Catharines course. But there's definitely some sibling rivalry which took place. So we kind of watched out for each other, which I think.
So your brothers showed you
did.
how to win?
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to
They
clarify
definitely
that.
rubbed it in my face.
They
for
showed you how
a
to win
good
at
year
St.
or
Catharines.
two.
Okay.
Yeah. And Buffalo raises some great, down-to-earth families and kids. I think it's one of the best places to grow up because you'll see in lots of other areas of the country you can grow up with the silver spoon, a little pretentious, and coming from Buffalo, I think you can add a great deal of integrity to some of these other rowing programs, and these coaches know it, and I think they like Buffalo kids. I think they like them.
There's a quote in the Wall Street Journal on Monday by Steve Messler, who was the U.S. Olympic Championship four-man bobsledding, and he says he wants our kids from Buffalo to be proud of where they came from and the fact that you can do anything. And I know from all the Ivy League athletes that we've been able to send for football and other sports, that a kid from Buffalo has got his feet grounded, pretty basic kid that coaches like to work with because we don't have as much luggage to deal with. And in this challenging society where these kids are easily distracted by wealth and all these other things, we get some pretty focused kids coming out of St. Joe's, and especially focused in the world of crew and doing a great job. Maybe you can talk about that for a second, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that the hunger in the belly of the Buffalo kids, and I coached rowing at Princeton for 3 years, and I tell you, anytime I saw a kid from Buffalo that was rising to the top academically, they were on not only my radar, but all the Ivy's radar, because they knew that those kids were tough. They knew that they were not going to quit after the first year. They're going to see that program through, and they knew that they were not going to be the complainer on the team because they were solid citizens. And those are to put those three qualities together in an athlete is just, you just don't have that a lot. I tell you, going to the line and racing, knowing that if I was going up against a kid that went to Exeter or St. Paul's or one of these schools that was $50,000 a year for high school, I loved it because I knew that kid was this white, lazy, soft kid that had been handed everything in his life. And here, coming out of Buffalo, you got to fight. And just like you were saying with your dad, like you got to stand up for yourself. I tell you, I think Buffalo kids just do it better. And I think St. Joe's prepares you to be in that position when you leave. So that's.
Kevin, you mentioned you were able to get a scholarship to Princeton. I often have kids say or parents ask me, can I get a scholarship? Can I get a scholarship? And in the sport of rowing, scholarships are out there and they are available, but most often that comes with great academic prowess. What I most frequently tell the parents, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit being involved with Princeton now, is that rowing, what it can do is open doors at the very least, if not get you a scholarship. You may not get a rowing scholarship, but it may open doors for you, and your son would have the ability to row potentially for a Division I school. Not necessarily just Ivy Leagues, but there's a lot of Division I schools that have rowing programs, and I think that's a great opportunity. Not a lot of very few athletes in other sports come out of St. Joe's and play Division I football or Division I basketball. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of misinformation that's out there, and the biggest is, I think, with college tuitions and how you get this bill paid for. I mean, when I asked my parents, okay, I just need to know how large, this is when I was a freshman at St. Joe's, how large is my trust fund? I need to know this because I want to know how much college I can afford. My mom just started laughing hysterically, and she's like, you see your 3 brothers and sisters? That's your freaking trust fund. So
Right.
you better figure out how to pay for college. And the funny thing is, the Ivy Leagues get tagged as being ultra expensive, and compared to some of the other schools, they're not as expensive. And here's some interesting numbers for you. At the better schools, at Princeton, for example, and Harvard, if your family makes $180,000 or less, you're on financial aid. $180,000.
Wow.
That's a good salary. So if you are pulling in more than $180,000, you probably should be paying some tuition. But everyone under that gets financial aid. Now at Princeton, the average financial aid package this past year was $40,000. That was the average.
Wow.
Outright cash grant, no
Outright,
loans.
no loans, and you can't even say that graduating UB.
So if
You're
a family had a
graduating.
family income of $80,000, had 2 or 3 kids, mortgage payments and so on, they're going to fall right into that $40,000 cash grant.
They're going to go to Princeton or Harvard probably for free.
It's less than it costs to go to St. Joe's.
Much less than it costs to go to ECC.
And Kevin, if you have an athlete at St. Joe's, and let's say he's an A student, and he's got good ERG scores, hits the Ivy League number, for that parent to sit there and say, I can get an 80% outright cash grant, get an Ivy League education, you and I both know economically what that degree can do for the kid and how it could translate into a significant boost for those that want to make money, that are income-oriented, or for those that wanted to get into graduate programs, they can leverage into different programs that they can get into because they have that undergraduate degree. Both of us, you and I, have experienced Ivy League schools. We do know the hardest thing about these schools is getting in.
It's not staying in. Once you're in, you're going to graduate, and it will open up doors. Your peer set is a little different, and I think being a Buffalo kid and coming from St. Joe's and getting through some of these top college machines, you're at an advantage because the people want to partner up with you in business because you are grounded. You bring that Lasallian, ethical, I'm going to do the right thing mentality, and that helps in the business world, and people latch onto that. So if you can carry both the academic prowess and this Buffalo background and fuse those, it's
What's
magic.
amazing to me is the humility of the Lasallian tradition of, what we were taught at St. Joe's is a love of learning. We were able to take that on to different Ivy League schools and leverage it into different careers. That same humility makes the St. Joe's athlete terrifically coachable and very easy to point in the right direction.
I think that's well said, yeah.
But the other thing too, Kevin, is that when I've looked at some of the statistics you've generated, if you got a kid who's got a good ERG score at an SAT, normally, how many valedictorians will get into Princeton? What's the percentage?
Well, Princeton rejected last year 81% of the valedictorians that applied. So, to be a valedictorian, it's not sealing the deal at any of the Ivy League schools. If you can pull your great ERG, follow the coach here,
Right.
and stick your nose to the grindstone and be in that top 5 to 10% of your class, you've earned the right to apply to these Ivy League schools.
And it's competitive. These Ivy League schools want you, and you'll have these schools chasing after you.
Yeah.
When you call them with your ERG time and your SAT and you say, I want to go, these coaches want to meet you, especially want to hear from a kid from Buffalo.
Exactly. I think you stand out compared to a kid from another part of the country. It does carry its weight because you're going to row for 4 years. Because that's what Buffalo kids do. They're dedicated, they see it through, and they do the right thing. And
St. Joe's historically, I believe, based on all the numbers that I've seen, has sent the highest percentage